Hey YouTube, what's going on? Now, I'd like to react to the highlights of an interview that was conducted with Elon Musk by CNBC about 4 months ago at time of recording. Now, full disclosure, I already made an attempt at doing that, and I didn't have the audio settings set up optimally within OBS when I made that recording, and also I don't necessarily think I did the greatest job in all respects, so I would like to have a second shot at it. I have to admit that I'm genuinely disturbed by the cultural phenomena that is Elon Musk, and as much as anything, I'm kind of bothered by the fact that I myself really bought into the hype for so many years. I don't actually believe that Elon Musk is this once-in-a-generation genius visionary who's going to drag humanity kicking and screaming into the future, solving climate change, getting us off Earth and becoming an interplanetary species, all of that kind of stuff. I think in reality, Elon Musk is something else entirely, and I want to focus on this particular interview because I think it undeniably demonstrates that Elon is actually a very problematic human being, and it's quite remarkable actually that somehow we've come to believe, almost in many cases sycophantically so, that he is a special person. Well, he is kind of special, but not in the ways that we tend to think he is. And again, I think as we walk through this interview, it will be absolutely undeniable that we are not dealing with a genius, but actually something completely on the other side of that spectrum. So we will walk through the highlights of the interview, and I will do my absolute best to try and point out why Elon is actually a complete moron, and we need to recognize that society needs to be a little bit smarter. We need to start employing some critical thinking when we listen to what certain people try to tell us, especially people that have some sort of uncanny ability to sell snake oil. Now, he's certainly not the first person that's been revealed recently to be like that. We've got Elizabeth Holmes, we've got SBF, and both of these people, if before they were exposed as being complete con artists, we would seriously have entertained the idea that they were legitimate geniuses. Of course, we know now that they're nothing of the kind, and I think it is already abundantly clear that Elon Musk is really very little different from those people. So this is my particular little contribution to pointing that fact out. This particular interview bothered me greatly because of one particular component of it, which will actually be the last segment that I address, and hopefully it will become clear why I chose this interview to do my particular little expose on him. So let's just dump into it and see what's really going on.
You talk about enhancing humanity. I'm curious then about AI, which many people say will lead to great productivity gains. You showed those robots. I mean, I can imagine what they conceivably could do when powered by AI. But I'm also curious, because you've certainly been concerned, what percentage do you give the chance that it will destroy humanity?
Well, the advent of artificial general intelligence is called a singularity because it is so hard to predict what will happen after that.
Okay, so did you hear what Elon said there? He said that it's called the singularity because it's so hard to predict what will happen next. Now that is completely wrong. It's called the singularity because there's this idea that AI may reach a point where it's able to exponentially improve itself, so it can create ever better iterations of its own capabilities. Now, when that happens, it will, in effect, exponentially reach to a point where we can simply no longer control it. It's effectively in control of its own destiny, and it just keeps making itself better and better. So we term this the AI singularity, this point where it's crossing over an event horizon, and at that point we no longer have any control over it. Now, we don't know what the effects of that will be. It could be that it becomes like a benevolent God, but it also could be that it just decides that humanity really has no inherent value within the universe and either enslaves or simply wipes us out. We just don't know. Kind of a scary proposition, right? Is it going to take us to the next point of our evolution as a species, or is it going to simply wipe us out as it just heads off and decides to do whatever a super intelligent godlike AI decides it wants to do? We just don't know. But the fact that Elon phrased it in such a poorly and objectively incorrect way right away, that is a bad sign.
I think it's very much a double-edged sword. I think there's a strong probability that it will make life much better, and that we'll have an age of abundance, and there's some chance that it goes wrong, and destroys humanity. Hopefully that chance is small, but it's not zero. And so I think.
Yeah, so there's nothing too terrible about what he just said there, except he's extremely vague when he says destroys humanity. I think it would be a far more rational position to take that the immediate concern of AI is not that it's going to become Skynet, that it's going to become self-aware and take over humanity, but that with things like ChatGPT and, generative large language models demonstrating that there is a very real risk that certain types of jobs which we had previously assumed were beyond the reach of automation could very well be threatened by future iterations of AI. Excuse me. And that is something that we should probably take seriously and be concerned about. We need to manage that so that as AI becomes more powerful, that we, use it in a responsible way so that it actually improves our lives without damaging society and the economy in the process.
We want to take whatever actions we can think of to minimize the probability that AI goes wrong.
And you've called for a pause, along with a number of other people.
Yes, look, when I called for a friend of mine, Max Tegmark, is a physicist at MIT, wanted me to sign on to the letter. And it's like I knew it would be futile.
It is futile.
Okay, so Elon did sign a petition to help pause the research into AI, and I would like to posit that the real reason he did that is because that he realized when ChatGPT started really coming to everyone's attention that he made a big mistake leaving OpenAI, because he originally was a partner in that company, and he now needs to catch up. And what better way to catch up by actually getting your competition to actually pause all their development work while he dives headfirst into it. So he's definitely realised he missed the boat there, and he wants to do everything he can to create his own version of ChatGPT.
It's futile. I knew it would be futile. I just want to call it like it's one of those things. Well, for the record, I recommended that we pause.
Okay.
Did I think there would be a pause? Absolutely not. So,
but you're starting XAI. I think that's what you're calling it, or some new AI effort. How's it going to be different than OpenAI or Alphabet?
This is not the time to that's a. It's not. We don't have enough time, and nor is this the moment to really talk about it.
Okay.
We will have a launch event, and we'll explore the issues in more detail. But
he doesn't really want to talk about it because honestly, he hasn't got anything specific to get people excited about what they're doing with their own AI research. He's been promising self-driving cars for the last 15 years, and he's been saying that it's, a year or two away for at least the last 10 years. Obviously, that hasn't been happening. I will point out that he did do an interview not so long ago where he acknowledged that trying to solve self-driving cars probably also requires solving AGI, artificial general intelligence. And let me just say right now, we are an incredibly long way away from solving that. So, yeah, interesting.
I should say that and I mentioned this at the shareholder meeting, that Tesla has actually tremendous capability in real-world AI.
Yes.
In fact, it is very far ahead of anyone.
I know people actually on Twitter prior to our interview were saying, he never gets asked about how advanced.
Yeah, he made a claim that Tesla is way ahead in artificial intelligence research, but he's not really justifying, or he's not really providing us with any real evidence of that, apart from the fact that he's probably not even as advanced as many other companies that are also focusing on creating self-driving cars, such as Waymo, for example, and possibly some companies in China that are also working very hard in this space. There's no evidence that Tesla are even on par with what these other companies are doing.
His AI is at Tesla. You always talk about the other names.
Tesla AI is it's like. I'm not even sure who's second, frankly.
Why is that? Then what are people not understanding about?
He's implicitly suggesting that Tesla are number one, and he doesn't even know who's in second place. But this is just Elon saying that. He's not provided a shred of material or empirical evidence to actually hold up on that. And I think if we did a closer look at all the companies that are working on self-driving vehicles, autonomous self-driving vehicles, it would not be the case that Tesla is in the lead.
About what you have, and why are we talking so much about ChatGPT and generative AI at OpenAI and what Microsoft's going to be able to do with it, and not about Tesla?
I don't know. I mean, people do talk about it online. I think
I don't know. People are talking about it online. That is not exactly a strong position, or it's there's no evidence there. It's just Elon really talking in his classically vague and slippery way to essentially avoid the question.
I think Tesla will have sort of a ChatGPT moment, maybe if not this year, I'd say no later than next year.
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. You're going to have a
sort of ChatGPT moment.
Oh, you will. In terms of suddenly it will.
Yeah, suddenly 3 million cars will be able to drive themselves with no one.
Right. It goes back to that. Right.
Yeah, and then 5 million cars, and then 10 million cars.
Hyperbolic, incredibly hyperbolic. I mean, yeah, you can decide to believe that just because Elon said it, but I don't think that is a reason to do so. I'm going to move on to the second highlight video, see what he has to say.
Let's talk a bit about your tweets, because it comes up a lot. Even today, it came up in anticipation of this. I mean, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
So he said some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true. Therefore, it is logically deducible to say that some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be not true. So the question we then need to ask is, why is a man who is the owner of multiple multi-billion-dollar companies tweeting about conspiracy theories, some of which turn out not to be true. This is not responsible behavior from someone in his position.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was a pretty big deal. There was Twitter and others engaged in active suppression of information that was.
Hunter Biden's laptop was not a big deal. It didn't reveal some deep conspiracy theory. It had some photos of Hunter Biden getting sucked off by a prostitute. Okay, that was very salacious, but who cares? The Republicans, used some of those photos in pretty bad taste, which really did nothing more than demonstrate that, for one, Hunter Biden is well endowed, and two, that his father genuinely loves Hunter in spite of the fact that he's a demonstrable fuck-up. He's basically said, I'm going to stand by you, son, no matter what. And really, all that did was come to demonstrate that, if nothing else, Joe Biden is a good man who loves his son. Nice job, Elon.
Was relevant to the public. That's a terrible thing that happened. That's election interference.
But how do you make a choice? You don't see, in terms of when you're going to engage. For example, even today, Elon, you tweeted this thing about George Soros. Well, I'm looking for it because I want to make sure I quote it properly. But you know what you wrote. But you basically.
It reminds me of Magneto's. It's like, calm down, people. This is not like made a federal case out of it.
You also, you said he wants to erode the very fabric of civilization, and Soros hates humanity. Like, when you do something like that, do you
I think that's true. That's my opinion.
Okay, but why share?
See, I'm just going to say here that I actually do think Elon Musk is slightly on the spectrum. Now, he did come out and say publicly that he has Asperger's, but I want to point out that there's been no medical corroboration of that. There's no evidence that he's ever been actually officially diagnosed with it. I think when he did that, he did so because he kind of wanted to create a narrative that he's just one of these geniuses who doesn't necessarily relate well with other people, and that we should sort of cut him some slack for that, because this was when his public image was starting to deteriorate. So I think it was strategic. I don't think he's ever been officially diagnosed, but I do think from the way he behaves and the way he perceives the world that, yeah, he possibly is autistic at some level. And quite frankly, we shouldn't be hating on him for that. We should be perhaps understanding a little bit more about what's going on with him because of that. Ultimately, though, it doesn't excuse what he's doing and how it's impacting other people.
Share it. Why share it? Especially, why share it when people who buy Teslas may not agree with you, advertisers on Twitter may not agree with you? Why not just say, hey, I think this? You can tell me, we can talk about it over there, you can tell your friends, but why share it widely?
This is freedom of speech. I'm allowed to say what I want.
You absolutely are, but I'm trying to understand why you do, because you have to.
Yeah, I agree. Freedom of speech is important, and it's a concept inherent to democracy that I very much believe in. So the question here is not about freedom of speech. The question here is whether he is exercising good judgment as he, uses his right for freedom of speech, and indulging in publicly endorsing conspiracy theories, especially ones that seem to lean into QAnon, is very problematic.
No, it puts you in the middle of the partisan divide in the country. It makes you a lightning rod for criticism. Do you like that? People today are saying he's an anti-Semite. I don't think you are.
No, I'm definitely. I'm like a pro-Semite, if anything.
I believe that probably is the case.
Yes.
But why would you even introduce the idea?
Yeah, I don't think he's anti-Semitic so much as I think he's just very prone to spiraling down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, and is just too irresponsible to realize that he shouldn't tweet about everything he thinks, because it can have some very, very destructive impacts on other people's lives. So we'll see an example of that as we continue.
Idea then that would be the case.
I mean, look, we don't want to make this a George Soros interview.
No, God, no. I don't want to at all. But what I'm trying, even came up though in the annual meeting. I mean, you know, do your tweets hurt the company? Are there Tesla owners who say, I don't agree with his political position because, and I know it because he shares so much of it? Or are there advertisers on Twitter that Linda Yaccarino will come and say, you got to stop, man, or, you know, I can't get these ads because of some of the things you tweet?
Just quickly, I've got to feel very sorry for Linda Yaccarino, although perhaps sorry isn't quite the right word. She knew what she was getting into, but the few times I've sort of heard her speak publicly, it's just, this is someone like performing mental gymnastics, trying to justify the unjustifiable. It really is quite uncomfortable just even listening to what she has to say as she tries to defend what Elon is doing. But anyway. Yeah, you'll notice here that he just doesn't even know what to say.
You know, I'm reminded of there's a scene in The Princess Bride, great movie, where he confronts the person who killed his father, and he says, offer me money, offer me power, I don't care.
Okay, all he's basically saying there is that basically zero fucks given. Elon is refusing to take responsibility for his very irresponsible behaviour on Twitter, and he's just too much of a man-child apparently to own it. That is literally what he's just saying here, and he's phrasing it in such a way that in his own mind he's demonstrating himself as just a brave individual who's willing to swim against the current of public opinion and who will speak truth, no matter how unpopular it is. But that isn't actually the issue here. The issue here is he is openly indulging in conspiracy theory. He's offering an opinion on something that isn't really supported by fact and which is potentially injurious to both his shareholders and potentially to other individuals who might find themselves harassed or even physically harmed by people that also support these conspiracy theories.
So you just don't care. You want to share what you have to say.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
Okay.
Yeah, but as I said, it's not just losing money. It's not just losing his money, it's losing the money of his shareholders, and it's also potentially putting other people's lives and well-being at material risk.
Okay. But, I mean, when you link to somebody who's talking about the guy who killed children in a mall in Allen, Texas, and you say something like it might be a bad psyop. I'm not quite sure what you meant, but...
Oh, in that particular case, there was somehow that's not that that obviously people were killed, but it was, I think, incorrectly described to be a white supremacist action.
See, he's making an assertion there to which there is no evidence. What he's really saying is that he doesn't believe that it had any association with white supremacists. He doesn't know that. He just doesn't want to believe it because currently he's really finding himself moving towards right-wing QAnon conspiracy theories. Now, I do actually think he kind of genuinely does believe what he's saying. I don't believe personally that he's moving to the right just because it's politically expedient for him to do so. I think he's actually doing it because I think someone who is on the spectrum is very susceptible for starting to believe in very bad ideas when they're exposed to those ideas. So that's my personal take on it. Doesn't make it any less damaging, and perhaps might make it even more damaging.
And the evidence for that was some obscure Russian website that no one's ever heard of, that had no followers. And the company that found this is Bellingcat.
Right.
And do you know what Bellingcat does? PsyOps.
Right. I couldn't really even follow exactly what it was you were trying to express there, so that's in part why I was curious.
See, he's just deep down the rabbit hole here.
But I'm saying that I thought the ascribing it to white supremacy was bullshit.
Okay.
And that the information for that came from...
No, he thinks it was bullshit because that is where his biased and conspiratorial mindset is leading him down to believe.
Obscure Russian website, and was somehow magically found by Bellingcat, which is a company that does PsyOps.
And there's no proof, by the way, that he was not.
There's no. I would say that there's no proof that he is.
Which means, again, he's admitting to the fact that he's offering an opinion on a potentially explosively politically sensitive situation just because of what he personally believes but does not know. And again, this is not the behavior of a responsible owner of multiple multi-billion-dollar companies.
And that's a debate you want to get into on Twitter?
Yes. Because we should not be ascribing things to white supremacy if it's false.
Okay, I think this next one is what really hits home for me most significantly, and kind of what I actually most wanted to talk about. So let's go. Make sure I play the right video.
Look, I'm a big believer that people are more productive when they're in person, and really, man, and the whole sort of work from home thing. It's like, I think it's. Look, there are some exceptions, but I kind of think that the whole notion of work from home is a bit like the fake Marie Antoinette quote, "Let them eat cake." It's like really, you're going to work from home, and you're going to make everyone else who made your car come work in the factory. You're going to make the people who make your food that gets delivered, that they can't work from home. The people that come fix your house, they can't work from home, but you.
All right. What Elon is doing here is absolutely shocking to me. He seems not to be able to understand the difference between someone who is, say, coming around to your home to paint your house, as versus, say, someone who is remotely connecting to the office through a VPN in order to develop software. This should not need explaining to any person of at least even modest levels of IQ. When someone comes around to your house to paint your house, they come around to your house so that they can paint your house. This is just absurd. And I cannot believe that he is misunderstanding the problem and then turning it into a question of moral equivalency. In fact, his position about morality actually, if anything, should be argued in the other direction.
Can? Does that seem morally right? That's messed up.
You see it as a moral issue?
Yes.
I mean, I see it more as
and
just
it's a productivity issue, but
yeah.
It's also a moral issue. People should get off the goddamn moral high horse with the work from home bullshit.
Oh my God. All right. Let's look back on the pandemic. During the pandemic, people who could work from home because, they create their product as, say, software, which can be transmitted remotely to the office, stored remotely on the servers, so they don't actually physically need to be in the office. All they're doing is not spreading the virus, right? They're not all collecting together, passing the virus from one person to the other, who then potentially infects his grandmother, who then, ends up having to go to hospital and potentially passes away after being put on a ventilator. So they are doing the moral thing by working from home.
because they're asking everyone else to not work from home while they do.
And yet
It's wrong.
there's still pushback, by the way. It's still going on. This battle is still happening. I mean, leaders of organizations, and I speak to plenty of them, I want people back. I want people back. 3 days.
Let's consider a morally enlightened company that actually allows much of its staff to work from home. Now, perhaps those people that work from home can now enjoy a better quality of life because of that. And perhaps they may become more loyal to the company, more grateful to the company, because they realize their employer has a policy that allows them to live a better life. So they become more loyal, they work harder, they feel a sense of commitment to that company because the company is treating them well. I mean, why does that particular worldview simply not even come close to entering Elon's skull? I just do not understand.
Days a week, they're still battling. It's not clear that it's ever going to change. People are not coming back 5 days a week.
The laptop class is living in La La Land, okay? As I said.
See, he's showing absolute contempt for the people that, would like to work remotely. And he thinks they're morally destitute for wanting to do that. I just do not understand how someone can think that way unless they've just not properly understood the original situation itself properly, which again seems to suggest that Elon is not in fact a very intelligent person. I would also like to point out that many companies now do hot desking, and what they do is they provide enough desks for, say, about 70% of their workforce. This allows them to reduce the amount of real estate that they need to lease for office space. So they are, in effect, using their own staff to provide free office space by working from home. And I would also like to point out that Elon Musk is obviously into electric cars because he believes that is an environmentally friendly thing to do. But do you know what's even more environmentally friendly than driving an electric car? And that is not driving a car at all. That is about as good as you can get for not contributing to carbon emissions. So again, that is actually more morally tenable than actually driving into the office, doing a job that you could do just as effectively from home. Now, I just want to say one more thing here, because I've been a software engineer for the entirety of my life. And like a lot of software developers, I love peace and quiet. I've written some of the best code I've ever done from home in a space where I'm not being interrupted by anyone, where I can just literally get into the zone. I would like to point out that sometimes I have moments of inspiration at hours outside of 9 to 5. So just being able to wander into my computer room, connect to the network, start coding, do something while the inspiration is there. That is an incredibly effective way of really doing something worthwhile for the company. And again, that is something that can happen when you can work remotely rather than coming into the office.
You can't, but look at the cars. Are people working from home here? Of course not. So the people were building cars, servicing the cars, building houses, fixing houses, making the food, making all the things that people consume. It's messed up to assume that yes, they have to go to work, but you don't. How is?
He just doesn't get it. You cannot compare someone who has to physically be located where they're doing their work with someone who can do it remotely. Let's imagine a futuristic world, which should be right up Elon's alley, where you can literally control a mechanical avatar, and you can actually use that avatar to paint the house so you don't have to be there physically. That when we, or let's say, you're controlling robots on the moon, because, the moon is not particularly hospitable to human life. So you do it remotely. You have an avatar that's actually building and constructing a habitat on the moon, doing it on your behalf. You do that remotely. The fact that whether you were there physically or whether you were remotely controlling that avatar, you're still getting the work done. What he's saying just doesn't make sense, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to actually understand that. Wow.
That is, it's not just a productivity thing. I think it's morally wrong.
Although productivity is definitely impacted too, and the ability of people to learn,
I
and on and on. Listen, I
mean, look,
but
people will disagree with me about this, but it's like.
Disagree with him not on moral issues, but on the very premises upon which he's basing his argument. He has not framed the original argument properly and is then trying to argue a moral position against that incorrect framing. This is real debating 101 stuff, and he should not have been let loose to offer this kind of talking point when it has been so badly thought through in the first situation. This is just shocking to me.
So if you want to work at Tesla, you want to work at SpaceX, you want to work at Twitter, you got to come into the office every day.
Yes, I mean, like I'm not saying, I'm saying like, look, put 40 hours in, and frankly, it doesn't even need to be like, Monday through Friday, you could work Monday through Thursday. And I'm also not saying no one should take, I think people should take vacations. Like I work 7 days a week, but I'm not expecting others to do that.
How much sleep do you get, by the way?
That's actually disingenuous what he just said there. Elon Musk is well documented for going into the office and basically spending 24/7 there so that he can then ask the rest of his staff to do exactly the same without appearing to be a raging hypocrite. I'd like to point out that Elon is also well known to be an avid gamer. He loves playing video games. So just because he's in the office doesn't actually mean he's actually doing work. I would strongly like to suggest that a lot of the time he's in there, he's just playing video games or hanging out on Twitter, jumping down conspiracy theories. Look, I believe that the best company is a company that practices balance, that actually encourages its staff to have a healthy work-life balance, and that the time they spend doing their work, whether it's physically located in the office or whether they're doing it remotely, is work that's being done by a healthy individual who's had a good night's sleep, who is not stressing about all the other things he needs to be doing in his life but is neglecting because he's spending 24/7 on his job. I think there's a strong case that my worldview is a better one than Elon's and is likely ultimately going to lead to a more productive company. But, you can argue that position either way. That's what I believe.
About 6 hours.
You do? 6 hours typically?
Yes.
No, that's not bad. I thought it would be less.
I've tried less, but my productivity, even though I'm awake more hours, I get less done.
Okay.
And the brain pain level is bad if I get less than 6 hours.
But you work 7 days a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually only, in terms of actually, you say like how many days in a year do I not put in some meaningful amount of work? It's probably about 2 or 3.
Right. 2 or 3 days?
A year.
Yeah, a year.
Okay, I just want to finish by saying, because obviously he's kind of indicating that he's heroic and he puts tremendous amount of time into working, which in 2 or 3 days a week, not 2 or 3 days in a year where he didn't actually work. This is really not believable, even when you take a look at all of the other antics he's gotten up to. He has, I think, about 12 children at this point. So, unless you call shagging the secretary a legitimate part of the job, then, yeah, I'm not quite so sure that it's all been just work. Okay, look, I'm going to leave it there. I feel like there's so much more I could say, but Elon Musk is not the quintessential genius of our time. He's a very problematic individual who I think has a lot of serious mental health issues. It's quite remarkable to me that someone like him has managed to accumulate so much wealth, and also so many people that actually believe that he is a genius with very little tangible evidence to really show for it. I think Elon has a talent for appropriating the achievements of others and then making it look as though he was the primary creator and author of those creations. The electric motor vehicle was around since the early 1900s, actually. So, yeah, it's not a new invention. His ideas around the Hyperloop, the Boring Company, are actually kind of disasters. When it comes to like solar roofing, he had those solar roof tiles. They didn't work. The solar roof tiles, as he demonstrated them, were never a thing, were not functional, and yet he tried to tell all of his investors that they were functional, that this was a thing. So he literally knowingly deceives his investors, and he's very, very good at it. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I don't think Elon Musk is the guy that's going to be taking us to Mars. And I think SpaceX is not going to be able to deliver on its contractual obligations to NASA. So I certainly hope NASA has a plan B up their sleeves, because if they're relying on him to actually deliver humans onto the face of the moon, I think they're going to be sorely disappointed. All right, peace out.